Have you experienced that moment when life presents exactly what you need, precisely when you need it most? Like you've been navigating uncertainty for months or years, and suddenly clarity emerges. This isn't mystical intervention, but psychological readiness, the culmination of internal preparation meeting external opportunity. If you're engaging with these ideas right now, it likely indicates you've crossed an important threshold in your personal development. You've moved from simply wanting change to actually being prepared for it. This distinction represents one of the most significant shifts in human psychology. Most people spend considerable time wanting different circumstances, better relationships, financial security, career satisfaction, or deeper sense of purpose. However, wanting remains largely passive. It allows for dreaming about transformation without requiring the discomfort of actual change. Readiness operates differently. It emerges when maintaining current patterns becomes more uncomfortable than facing the uncertainty of change. This psychological shift doesn't announce itself dramatically, but often appears as a particular type of emotional exhaustion. You might wake up feeling tired in a way that sleep doesn't address. Tired of repeating familiar behavioral patterns, having identical internal conversations, or feeling disconnected from your own life experience. This exhaustion isn't weakness, but rather your psyche signaling that current patterns no longer serve your development. This recognition initiates a fundamental shift in how you relate to your circumstances. Instead of accommodating situations that drain your vitality, you begin questioning why you've accepted conditions that limit your growth. Rather than viewing compromise as maturity, you start recognizing when settling has become self-abandonment. The truth is, you've been developing this readiness longer than you might realize, building psychological resources through experiences you may not have recognized as preparation. Every disappointment you survived, every time you recovered from setbacks, every moment you chose perseverance over surrender contributed to something deeper than optimism. This development builds genuine resilience, the kind that doesn't require external encouragement or validation. The kind that quietly understands it can navigate whatever challenges arise. This inner stability forms the foundation that makes meaningful change possible. However, many people misunderstand readiness as an emotional state. They wait to feel confident, prepared, or certain before taking action. This represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how psychological readiness actually functions. Readiness isn't a feeling you wait to experience. It's a recognition you come to understand. It's the moment you stop questioning whether you're prepared and start considering what actions to take next. People who are truly ready for change don't wait for perfect conditions. They work with available resources and circumstances because they understand that waiting for certainty often masks fear of commitment. Authentic readiness can be messy and uncertain. It involves beginning before you feel fully prepared, making decisions with incomplete information, and choosing discomfort over stagnation. It means recognizing that your current life, while familiar and safe, may be preventing you from developing your full potential. The person you're capable of becoming has been waiting patiently, not criticizing your pace or pushing for faster progress, but simply remaining available for when you're ready to meet them. This potential self has been communicating through various signals over time. Those moments when you felt capable of much more than your circumstances suggested. Those flashes of clarity when everything suddenly made sense. Those intuitive hunches you dismissed as unrealistic or impossible. All of these represented communications from your undeveloped potential. When readiness genuinely emerges, these subtle signals become more apparent. Not because they intensify, but because you finally stop filtering them out. You begin noticing patterns that were always present but previously invisible to your unprepared awareness. You start recognizing opportunities that existed all along but didn't register because you weren't psychologically prepared to act on them. Your energy shifts in ways that naturally attract different experiences and relationships aligned with your emerging development. Life has a way of testing readiness through small challenges before presenting larger opportunities. Rather than immediately providing what you want, it offers situations that require you to demonstrate the qualities you claim to be developing. Most people miss these preparatory opportunities because they're expecting dramatic breakthroughs or obvious signs. However, readiness develops through accumulated small choices. Choosing discipline over immediate gratification, maintaining boundaries that align with your values, and taking responsibility for your energy and decisions. When genuine readiness emerges, you stop seeking external permission for your choices. You stop needing everyone to understand your decisions or explaining yourself to people who weren't genuinely curious about your reasoning. You begin recognizing that many obstacles you've been citing were actually excuses disguised as legitimate problems. The resources, time, support, or knowledge you thought you lacked were often secondary to the primary issue. You weren't psychologically prepared to receive, handle, or maintain what you were requesting. Worthiness in this context isn't about deserving, but about capacity, becoming someone who can sustain what they're seeking without self-sabotage. Consider how many times you've obtained something you wanted only to undermine it, because you didn't truly believe you belonged in that situation. This pattern occurs when external circumstances change before internal development catches up. However, when you're genuinely ready, when you've addressed underlying fears, healed relevant wounds, and stopped avoiding yourself, everything shifts. You begin showing up authentically rather than performing. You make decisions from clarity rather than desperation. You build rather than merely consume. You create rather than only complaining. People notice these changes not because you're trying to impress them, but because authenticity naturally attracts attention. Confidence doesn't need to announce itself. Ready people don't need to convince others of anything. They simply move with purpose because they've developed internal certainty about their direction. This explains why timing matters in personal development. All the false starts, failed attempts, and moments when you almost gave up but didn't. These experiences were necessary because you weren't ready earlier. You needed to learn what you learned and discover your own strength through direct experience, because that's how lasting resilience develops. If you're engaging with these concepts right now, if they resonate differently than they might have months ago, pay attention. Readiness isn't about having everything figured out, but about finally being willing to figure it out as you proceed. What's surprising about genuine readiness is how different it feels from expectations. There's no dramatic revelation or sudden clarity about everything. Most often, readiness feels like surrender, not giving up, but releasing the version of yourself that was creating resistance to growth. It's that quiet moment when you stop fighting against natural development and begin working with your evolutionary impulses. People around you who've been observing your struggles often notice this shift before you do. They see you making different choices, establishing different boundaries, responding to challenges with calmness that wasn't previously present. Some may feel uncomfortable with these changes because your readiness to evolve can threaten their comfort with remaining static. Your willingness to change forces them to confront their own resistance to development. However, this is no longer your concern, because when you're ready, you stop managing other people's reactions to your growth. You stop diminishing yourself to make others comfortable or apologizing for becoming who you were meant to be. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or cutting people off, but rather understanding that you cannot genuinely love anyone if you're not willing to love yourself enough to grow. Readiness brings its own form of loneliness, not because you're isolated, but because you're more awake than many people around you. You begin seeing things differently. Conversations that once seemed normal become draining. Situations you previously tolerated become impossible to ignore. People you once sought validation from may seem limited by their own fears. This loneliness isn't punishment but purification, your life naturally clearing out elements that don't match your evolving frequency. Ready people don't just attract different opportunities, they attract different relationships. The kind of people who aren't threatened by growth, who don't need you to remain small for their security, who celebrate your evolution rather than questioning it. Before these new connections appear, you may experience a transitional phase that feels isolating. Familiar elements fall away before you know what will replace them. Old coping mechanisms stop working. Previous excuses sound unconvincing even to you. Your familiar identity begins shifting, and temporarily, you might not recognize yourself. This is where many people retreat, deciding that their previous life wasn't so problematic after all. They return to familiar dysfunction because uncertainty feels more dangerous than dissatisfaction. If you can navigate this transitional uncertainty, sitting with the discomfort of not knowing who you're becoming while the process unfolds, genuine transformation becomes possible. On the other side of that uncertainty lives a version of yourself you've never met, but somehow always known existed. The version that doesn't second-guess every decision or require external confirmation for internal knowing. The version that can handle both success and failure without identity collapse. This version has been trying to communicate with you for some time. The voice you've been drowning out with distractions, excuses, and endless research is still present and becoming harder to ignore. Readiness doesn't come with guarantees or detailed instructions. It comes with clarity about direction, even when specific outcomes remain unknown. If you've recognized yourself in these descriptions, the question isn't whether you're ready anymore. The question is what you're going to do with this recognition. Because readiness without action becomes another form of waiting, and you've likely done enough waiting. The potential version of yourself that's been patiently available won't wait indefinitely, not from impatience, but because life continues moving regardless of your participation. You can either step into who you're capable of becoming or remain on the sidelines while time passes. Your moment for action is now, not when you feel more prepared or when conditions seem perfect or when you've resolved every uncertainty. Now, because ready people don't wait for perfect timing, they create appropriate timing through decisive action. If these concepts resonate in a way that feels significant, consider making a simple declaration to yourself. Sometimes the most powerful step is acknowledging your readiness and meaning it genuinely. The opportunity exists. The path is available. The remaining question is whether you're finally prepared to move forward with purpose and commitment. Understanding the psychology of readiness helps distinguish between wanting change and being prepared for it. This distinction determines whether your efforts toward transformation will be sustainable or represent another cycle of temporary motivation, followed by return to familiar patterns. Genuine readiness emerges from accumulated internal development rather than external pressure or inspiration. It represents psychological maturity that can sustain the challenges and uncertainty that meaningful change inevitably requires. The exhaustion that often signals readiness reflects not weakness but strength, the strength to finally stop accepting circumstances that limit your potential. This fatigue with limitation creates the energy necessary for transformation. However, it's important to distinguish between healthy readiness for change and problematic impulsivity or dissatisfaction that might indicate underlying mental health concerns. Healthy readiness involves gradual recognition and thoughtful action rather than sudden dramatic decisions or feelings of urgency that seem disconnected from realistic assessment of your situation. If you're experiencing persistent feelings of detachment from your life, inability to find satisfaction in previously meaningful activities, or sense that nothing feels real or important, these might indicate depression or other conditions that would benefit from professional support rather than major life changes. The loneliness that can accompany readiness for growth is natural, but shouldn't become complete social isolation. Healthy development involves evolving your relationships and social connections rather than abandoning them entirely. If you find yourself cutting off all previous relationships or feeling completely alienated from everyone in your life, this might indicate the need for professional guidance to ensure you're navigating change in balanced ways that support both individual growth and social connection. The concept of attracting different people and opportunities as you change has some validity in terms of how personal development affects your choices and social interactions. However, this doesn't happen through mystical attraction, but through practical changes in how you present yourself, what you pay attention to, and what choices you make. Personal transformation requires balancing acceptance of where you are with commitment to where you're going. This balance prevents both stagnation and unrealistic expectations that can lead to disappointment and abandonment of positive change efforts. The process of change benefits from support systems including friends, family, mentors, or professional counselors who can provide perspective and encouragement during challenging periods. Isolated transformation without reality testing from others can sometimes lead to problematic thinking patterns. Sustainable change typically occurs gradually through consistent small actions rather than dramatic overhauls that may be difficult to maintain. While readiness might feel urgent, implementing change thoughtfully and systematically usually produces better long-term results. The recognition that you're ready for change represents an important milestone in personal development. However, readiness is just the beginning, the foundation that makes effective action possible. The next step involves translating that readiness into concrete steps toward your desired outcomes. This process works best when approached with both commitment to growth and realistic expectations about the time and effort required for lasting change. Understanding that setbacks and challenges are normal parts of development helps maintain motivation when progress feels slow or difficult. Personal transformation serves not only individual fulfillment, but also contributes positively to relationships, communities, and society. When approached healthily, your growth enhances your capacity to contribute meaningfully to others' well-being and shared human concerns. The ultimate goal isn't to become a completely different person, but to become more fully yourself, expressing your authentic values, capabilities, and potential in ways that serve both personal satisfaction and positive impact on the world around you.